All systems go. Clear for liftoff.
It is week 11 for college football, and 11 is two ones stacked next to each other, and we have a lot of stackable games on this slate. What's going on, everybody? My name's Bill. Put a dollar in front of it. You'll find me on Discord and Twitter. And like I said, it's another great week. Welcome to the College Football Ship It Nation DFS breakdown show as we look at all 12 games on the DK slate. Before we get there, you might notice there is this banner on our website. It's just $199 for the rest of the season for NFL and college football. That's the football package. It includes Saber Sim. So there's more than half the season left for both. The offer does end on November 10th. If you get in before then, you get put into a drawing for a 555 Millie Maker ticket. So that'll be the Millie Maker a week from Sunday, I believe, because we can't do it. If the drawing ends Monday, we can't do it on the Sunday before. Get it together, Bill. We're 2 minutes into the show, not even. Anyway, $199 for the rest of the season. An awesome deal to get in on. And obviously, you can see on our banner here that we still have the 5 days for $19. But anyway, just like there's so many reasons to get in and Ship It Nation. And even without the promotion, you get in for the winners. Now's the best time to join. Ranger, a 5-digit takedown for the third week in a row, $20,000. I believe this week was in NHL. And then we had Hoop Chopping, a big MMA slate. Mark and Axe Striker with big wins. Jay Anthony just back to his NBA showdown winning ways. Just an awesome run for Ship It Nation. It's been a great season, great 2025 all around. And we're continuing well into the later months. And I do want to remind you, too, we still have our special with Splash Sports. Splash is a great site. They got a ton of good promos. With what we're doing, if you use the code SHIPIT on Splash Sports, they're doing a 50% deposit match, a 100% payout boost on your first quick picks entry. That's NFL or NBA, and it's $20 max on 2 picks. And like I said last week, and you've probably heard it on other Ship It shows, they have so many other good promos and boosts that this is just the tip of the iceberg, not to be confused with Ludwig Oberg. There's so many other options to just cash in on Splash Sports. It's a great website. They're fairly new. We were introduced to them. Man, I was introduced to them, I think, last year, but they have grown so much and they just do so many awesome things for their customers. So great time to go sign up at Splash, and even better time if you use the code SHIPIT. But we will get into the college football slate if I could ever get that graphic down. Here we are. Look at us. Georgia and Mississippi State. Georgia, 9.5-point favorite on the road, and a great game, great team total. I'll probably be saying that a lot this slate. There's a lot of solid games on this slate. We got Gunnar Stockton coming off of a honestly pretty mid game in DFS terms, but not super unexpected against Florida. I would rather target Mississippi State with running backs, but I think Georgia is one of those offenses that can figure out a way to get it done any way they want to. And Stockton can get his legs going too. And I think if he does that, 8,300 is a fine price, especially, like I said, if we can get leverage on him too with his running ability. Pretty intriguing spot for Stockton. This backfield is still pretty confusing. Nate Frazier's been getting more snaps. Bowen has just been better. And Georgia can probably run until the cows come home in this game. It's just a matter of which guy it's going to be. Maybe it's both. Take a stand, play both, mix them both into your player pool, and that way you have exposure to which one it is. But either way, it's a great spot for this running game. And then Zachariah Branch is just still underpriced. They keep feeding him. He's averaging 9 points on catches alone the last 3 games. That's not even including his yards or touchdowns. Speaking of touchdowns, though, it wouldn't count as touchdowns because he hasn't found the end zone since week 3. So bounce back week, negative regression, or positive regression. I can't even speak. My brain's all curled. Anyway, Branch is a great play. Dylan Bell's probably the next best after Branch, probably because he could see a rush or two, and he's been getting a decent amount of targets. Noah Thomas is getting more run without Colby Young. He played a ton of snaps last week, but it took a score to salvage an otherwise bad day against Florida. So it's really Stockton and Branch and maybe one of those running backs. Bell, a cheap option. On the Mississippi State side, Blake Shapen has had a pretty up and down season. He's got a couple of great receivers to help support him. So I think he can get it done here. And I would rather attack Georgia through the air. And honestly, Georgia's defense, it's just not the scary defense that we used to think it was, especially since SEC teams are scoring a ton of points this year. So at 6,600, I don't mind him, especially if you think Mississippi State can keep up in this game. I do think it'll be some tough sledding for this running back room, though. Both Booth and Bothwell had pretty bad showings last week. Maybe if they get involved in the pass game here, you can play them. I mean, Booth at 7K is just a tough click. And Bothwell, you do get a discount. And Bothwell did have more snaps. So maybe you look at that and say, okay, you get the discount. He's getting the snap share. But also Kamario Taylor is a young kid who they've been working in a little bit more too. So that could eat into it for those top two guys. And then the wideouts, they're probably the guys I have the most interest in. Brennan Thompson and Anthony Evans continue to get peppered with targets. And honestly, if you do stack the Georgia side, these are probably my favorite two run backs, and not bad if they're just one-offs in your player pool as well. But could be a little bit of a sneaky game. Like I said, if Mississippi State keeps up, this game has potential to be pretty high scoring. BYU at Texas Tech. BYU, the number 7 ranked team in the nation, playing the number 8 ranked team in the nation. So they're probably pretty competitive, favored, right? Maybe even favored, right? No, they're 10-point dogs. I don't remember if it's ever happened that a number 7 ranked team playing a team ranked below them is a 10-point dog, even on the road. Anyway, Bear Bachmeier's price has finally caught up with him. And, BYU's continue to put up points. They continue to win. They do it in weird ways sometimes. They got to play a lot of catch up sometimes, but it's just a tough click with this price against this defense. I mean, could he get there? Sure. Maybe it's an or he could situation this week with Bear Bachmeier. But he's like, if BYU wins this game, he's one of the probably 4 reasons it happens. LJ Martin is one of those other reasons. Also very expensive. He did get hurt last game, but he's now listed as probable. Again, not a great matchup, but if he's 100%, the raw points upside could be there. It's just that he's $8,000. Again, wide receivers in this game too, just like I said with the Mississippi State. BYU has the same sort of deal. Parker Kingston and Chase Roberts, 2 receivers. Even in a tough matchup, Chase Roberts is underpriced at $4,500. But Kingston has been showing some big game potential lately too. I do like both of these guys if you're playing the BYU side, or again, just one-offs or runbacks from Texas Tech. And on the Texas Tech side, Baron Morton's price is one that I still think it's underpriced. He wasn't great in his first game back, but Texas Tech ran the ball a ton in that game. BYU has actually been giving up a little bit more through the air lately, so he can definitely get there at sub 7K. And the Cougars have had to come from behind to eke out some of these wins they've had. And I'm not going to call them a fluky undefeated team quite yet, but they're on the border for me. So if Texas Tech can get ahead early and just keep the pedal down, Baron Morton could be very much involved in that. BYU's run defense has not been good. Both Cam Dickey and Jacoby Williams got fed last game. Like I said, 21 carries for Dickey and 17 for Williams. Williams was just far more effective. And then you got the discount on him to boot. 5K is far too cheap for this guy, and Tech is expected to score in this atmosphere. So could end up being one of the higher owned running backs on the slate, although there are some real good values coming up that might actually lower that a little bit. So if we can get Jacoby Williams with some leverage, I do like that quite a bit. And then this receiver room, Caleb Douglas is he's just on a stellar run, 29 targets in the last 3 games alone. And he's kind of emerged as the alpha that we thought he was going to be at the beginning of the season, what he was last year. His price has followed him a little bit. He is the most expensive, but I still think you can take a shot on him here. These other 3 guys, Reggie Virgil, Coy Eakin, Terrence Carter, they all have potential. I do prefer Virgil. It does seem like he's the number 2, and it also seems like Eakin and Carter have they're more vulnerable to kind of disappear or have at least a down game from time to time. Douglas and Virgil are the first two guys I'm looking at. But they will still spread the ball around. So it's just hard to predict which guy it's going to be, Douglas and Virgil being the safest. But I wouldn't blame you if you took a shot on those other guys. And like I said, at BYU can keep it close. This game could shoot out as well. Texas Tech's defense has just been real stellar this week. All right, on to the next game where the defenses have not been stellar. Colorado at West Virginia. Colorado 6-point dog, which, I mean, I know West Virginia is not great, but the fact that they're like 6-point dogs on a road trip to the East Coast is a little bit surprising. But it's a special game because we got freshman on freshman quarterback. One was ranked as a top 10 quarterback recruit. One most certainly was not. Juju Lewis is that top 10 quarterback. The kid definitely has an arm. He doesn't run much, but his passing game is enough to get you there easily. Like if it's at its peak, easy, he gets you there at 6,300. And West Virginia's pass defense has been pretty butt this year. So if you trust Juju Lewis on the road, he's a solid value option for sure. Running backs, same old story for Colorado these past few years. Pretty poor output. Michael Welch and Dallin Hayden are the guys if you go there. Maybe a stellar pass game from Lewis opens up this running game a little bit more, but you're asking a lot. DeKalen Taylor showed a spark early, but he's been off the injury report for the last couple of weeks and still hasn't played. My gut feel is that since he's a senior and he still has 1 year of eligibility if he redshirts and he's played in 4 games already this year, that I wouldn't be surprised to see him have him take his redshirt, then he gets a full year with Lewis next year. So it's really just those two running backs. But even though I like targeting West Virginia, I don't know if you can click those guys even at their cheap prices. If you like the prospect of Juju here, you probably like these wide receivers. When Juju Lewis came in against Arizona, he spread the ball out. But Omarion Miller got the biggest share of those targets and had the long touchdown. It was actually a really nice pass and catch. It wasn't like a screen or anything that Miller had to do most of the work. It was a good pass and a good catch. And West Virginia, like I said, pass defense, poor. They've been getting torched in the slot, but you can really get them anywhere. Either way, Joseph Williams has been playing out of the slot a lot more the last few games. So another real good option here. These guys are cheap. Sincere Brown, Draylon Miller, also fine options. And Zach Atkins actually got a few targets from Lewis too. So maybe you can take a shot on him. He's the cheapest of the bunch. Well, I guess he's the same price as Draylon Miller now that I'm looking at it. Maybe you should read, Bill. But anyway, all of these guys are under consideration. Colorado's not a bad stack, even at this lower team total in terms of how the slate breaks down, just because of how cheap they are. On the West Virginia side, Scotty Fox is the other freshman who would have been great the last couple of weeks. We just didn't get him on a DFS slate. I will caution that you can score on Colorado, but Scotty Fox has gotten a lot of his points on rushing touchdowns. However, scoring on Colorado is easy. So the 2 rushing touchdowns are not that far out of the question. But either way, he uses his legs enough at 6,200. Another fine option on this slate. Diori Hubbard, man, he's in that first click and cash sort of category at 4,800. The defense for Colorado has not been good. The run defense specifically has been like a swinging door. And there's a path you could even stack Fox with Hubbard just because of how cheap they are. They're both like Fox is a runner, and the volume's going to be there. And most of that because Sincere Bowers is really the only other guy in the backfield. Ash was in a boot last week, and now he's doubtful to play. So you got 2 running backs, and then Scotty Fox, who's basically a running back some of the time too. So I do like this run game for West Virginia. The pass game, Cam Vaughn is a top option for Scotty Fox, but you're paying for it, at least in terms of West Virginia. Rodney Gallagher has been consistent in terms of targets the last few weeks, but Jeff Weimer has been pretty good with Fox too, and he's cheap, and now he's been upgraded to probable. So we do think he's going to play. Anyway, this is a good game to stack. I think maybe a little bit sneaky. Actually, I can't even call it sneaky because I do think Diori Hubbard might be the highest owned play on the slate. So it could help gravitate people toward this game overall. They see Hubbard and they want to run back, or they end up wanting to stack it once they see the prices if they haven't already. So a target game either way. There's potential for a lot of points here. Indiana and Penn State, potential for a lot of points for one team. I don't know what else I can say about Indiana. Mendoza's been great, but he's also been really up and down for DFS. I do think he's still playable, but there's other expensive QBs we'll talk about later that might be in better spots. Hemby and Black still split, but the Hoosiers are good enough. Either guy can get there. You do get a pretty significant discount on Kalen Black. So if you do need savings, I wouldn't mind if you landed on 4,900 and he's your last guy in your lineup. Cooper and Surratt, always on the table, but Surratt is questionable with a hamstring injury, and hamstrings are tricky. So if he can't go, I mean, that's just a clear boost to Cooper. Cooper did get a ton of the looks in the last game. EJ Williams has gotten a lot more targets lately. Without Surratt, though, Charlie Becker did see the field a lot more, but he didn't really do a lot with it. Cooper, again, was the biggest beneficiary. So even at 6,800, becomes a real good play. I mean, he's already a good play. He becomes an even better play if Surratt doesn't go. On the Penn State side, I mean, it's tough to ask any of these Penn State guys to get there in this game environment. Katron Allen did run his tail off against Ohio State, but he needed 21 attempts to get 76 yards and a touchdown. And 76 yards and a touchdown ain't going to get it done at 6K, Bob. Maybe you get lucky with Penn State, but I just don't see it here in this game. Much of the same in this next game in terms of being a one-sided. Ohio State with the largest team total on the slate at 39. Julian Sand is a stellar play. Still sub 9K. He's on a push for the Heisman. At least 28 DK points in 3 of his last 4, including 2 straight with more than 30. And it should be easy money. It's just a matter of how much he plays in this game. And if they continue to let him throw the ball, assuming they're preparing him. And I mean, the Heisman is in play, but they're preparing him for the big matchups in the college football playoff too. Bo Jackson, main guy again, got the 100-yard bonus on just 13 carries in the last game, and he's in a good spot here too. The biggest risk to him is other guys eating into him. Donaldson, Peoples, and even Isaiah West will all work in. So 5,400 in that mid-tier, it's a great spot against Purdue. Speaking of great spot against Purdue or against anybody for that matter, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, that's all I got to say. They refused to price Carnell Tate up. So he honestly could be the top receiver play on the slate. There might be one that'll, challenge him for that later on, and it'll be pretty obvious when we get there too. And Max Clare, revenge game going back to Purdue for the first time, playing his old team for the first time, matter of fact. And if Ohio State cares about that and they're like, you know what, Max, we're going to get you 2 touchdowns today, they can do it. They'll figure it out. They can win this game however they want to. Brandon Inniss will be involved as well, but you're probably looking for a touchdown or 2, maybe something in garbage time. He might not even be in garbage time, to be completely honest. And then Purdue with a 9-point team total. Again, not much to say about them. You're banking on the athleticism of Ryan Brown, maybe, but we don't need to talk much about a team with a team total under 10. Maryland at Rutgers, very close, very competitive, high-scoring game. Rutgers' defense is awful. Against Power 5 opponents, Purdue's the only team that scored fewer than 30 points. So Malik Washington is in a prime spot for a bounce back. And he's in the mid-price range, so if you don't have the money to pay up for a quarterback but you don't trust the values, he seems like the perfect combination. And just the matchup is stellar. DeJuan Williams is in a stellar matchup as well. He might be the only thing keeping Diori Hubbard's ownership from being 100%. His rushing numbers don't jump off the page at you, but he does have 8 targets in each of the last 2 games, and he's been involved in the passing game all season. And he's just kind of squeezed out Nolan Ray, and Williams is taking all of the snaps. So the other guys just don't eat into him enough to concern me at all at $5,000. And on paper, this is a pristine matchup. If the quarterback and the running back have pristine matchup, the wide receivers probably have a pristine matchup too. Farouk, Knott, Smith, Fleming, all in good spots. They each have a game. Farouk and Knotts each have Farouk. Slow down, rewind. Actually, I'm going to take a drink of water. Go ahead and hit the like button while I'm doing it. There we are. Throwing myself for a loop here. Tearing down the third wall. Is it fourth wall? Third wall? Fourth wall? Either way, I'm tearing it down. I do these late at night, so it is getting close to bedtime for DollaBill. But we still got college football to talk about, so I'm going to be juiced up for it. Just need a little spark with that water. Anyway, Farouk, Knotts, and Fleming have a game each with at least with double-digit targets. But Octavian Smith has maybe been the most consistent one. I could honestly see multiple guys getting here for Maryland. Just a matter of picking which one. Maybe you can double stack with Washington or do a Washington Williams with a wide receiver. There's so many ways to get there against this Rutgers team. You just got to find the right combination. And speaking of Rutgers, for as stackable as the Maryland side is, Rutgers is pretty close to just as stackable. 8th in Cali McManus, the Greek gunslinger, is 6'7". And that's just too cheap for this kind of matchup. He has put up some huge numbers this year. The only thing is with Athan is that the touchdowns don't always come with it. He has had a few rushing touchdowns, though, which definitely help. But I would imagine the reason that his price hasn't come up is just because he hasn't scored the touchdowns with all the yards he's getting. Antoine Raymond, 6,600, getting a lion's share of the work. Jayshon Benjamin got about the same amount of rushing production against Illinois, but Raymond still outsnapped him by 22 plays. So I think it's a stellar matchup for him too. He's one of those guys that is probably considerable in all formats just because of the workload he gets. He's had some games, I think, with like 25 carries or something ridiculous like that, maybe even more. And then with these wide receivers are all in a good spot too. We saw KJ Duff just go for 241 yards a couple of games ago through the air. Ian Strong gets a huge target share. DT Sheffield can spike at any time. Kenny Fletcher did miss the last game, but he could be back here too. And honestly, all of these guys, Duff, Strong, and Sheffield, are probably better off if Fletcher doesn't go. But I think all four of them are in play, even if he does. Duff and Strong are priced up for a good reason. But there are so many different ways you can stack this game and honestly overstack it. There's a lot of good team totals on this slate. There's a lot of good game totals on this slate, and they're all pretty clear. Not all, but a lot of them are pretty close to each other. So, it's a great week for GPPs with so many different ways you can play it and all the upside. But Maryland and Rutgers is certainly one of them. One that does not appear to be one of them, at least on paper, is Texas A&M and Missouri. Marcel Reed wasn't doing quite as much as I expected on the ground to start the year, but he has at least one rushing touchdown in 4 straight games. And he kind of exploded against LSU. And that, the last couple of games, running a little bit more, scoring touchdowns, kind of lines up with when Le'Veon Moss got hurt, and I don't think it's a coincidence. It is a tougher matchup, but A&M is kind of turning into the cream of the crop in terms of college football. Obviously, where they're ranked in the college football playoff standings tells you that. Ruben Owens is in line to get a majority of the snaps again in the backfield. This is a pretty tough row to hoe against Missouri. They only give up 3.2 yards a carry, but the volume could be there. I don't think Daniels and Smith or Marr or anybody really mixes in enough to concern me too much with volume. It's just how well he can do. And then Craver and Casey Concepcion, this wide receiver room, and Craver is $4,900. $4,900. I get it. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week 3, but it's just too cheap. Both the usage funnels to both of these guys. Concepcion should probably get the slight edge in pricing, but they should not be $1,400 different. Craver at $4,900 seems awesome. So yeah, I like the Reed. I like the Craver. I like the KC. Maybe Owens, but really just looking at the passing attack here, you can even play Marcel Reed naked, honestly. On the Mizzou side, Matt Zollers is going to be your starter for the Tigers, and with no Pribula, he looked okay against Vanderbilt. I don't know if I like him here. He's $7K. There's definitely cheaper options that are looking better than Matt Zollers. Maybe you can bank on practice prep helping, but I just don't know that I can get there. Ahmad Hardy still in line for a heavy workload outside of Arkansas. Teams really just haven't been able to run the ball on A&M, and it's a high price to pay for somebody in this sort of game environment. They're only projected to score 20 points. So at 7,100, you're probably banking on all of those points coming from Hardy, or at least a majority of them. And then the wide receivers kind of in the same boat. Tough to play these guys with the unknown at quarterback. Coleman in the slot's probably your best bet. I might have said Norfleet too at tight end with those shorter passes, but he's questionable, so we'll have to see on that. Again, if you play these Missouri guys, you're really putting a lot of faith in their quarterback in a real tough matchup against A&M. Onto the Kansas-Arizona game. Another two teams with great team totals, specifically Arizona, but this is another good game. Jalen Daniels is a little expensive. Seems to be the theme with a lot of quarterbacks this week, and I guess we'll have some more later coming up. Mobile quarterbacks have had some success against Arizona this year. Daniels just really hasn't had it recently, even in easier matchups against like Oklahoma State and UCF. But I definitely think he's certainly capable. Part of the reason Daniels had a down game against OK State is because they just ran Highshaw and Williams out of their boots. Highshaw did outsnap Williams 35-20, but both ran the ball 14 times, both scored. Highshaw scored twice. I mean, Kansas could run a little bit in this game too, but the split is a little bit more worrisome. They're just kind of in that cheap to mid-tier range. So they're definitely not the worst plays on the slate. And then it is a little bit tougher matchup through the air, but a lot of teams just haven't thrown much on Arizona. So if Kansas wants to, I mean, we could see them throw for 300 yards here. It wouldn't surprise me. Henderson and Pickett, still the top options. Pickett has had a couple okay games recently. Henderson has actually kind of fallen off a little bit since he had his huge game against Cincy, at least in terms of DFS. But both of them certainly capable. There's been a lot of chatter on the Kansas camps that this could be a game that sets up really well for Bowden Groen at the tight end position. But one thing that you do need to consider is Deshaun Hanukkah is likely back this week, and he was a starting tight end before going down. So don't push in all your chips on some chatter about Bowden Groen with Hanukkah coming back. But if he can hold his spot and keep his playing time, and that all comes to fruition, 4,400 isn't bad. On the Arizona side, Noah Fafita, probably a little underpriced here. He's looked really good lately, but a lot of it has been touchdowns. So if you think Arizona can score, that happens with touchdowns. Noah Fafita is in a great spot here too, especially with a 31-point team total. Kedrick Oscano had outsnapped Ismail Mahdi since coming back from injury up until last game, but honestly, they beat the brakes off of Colorado, so nobody really needed to do anything. In fact, there were 3 receivers that scored touchdowns, and those 3 receivers had a combined 4 catches. So if you mashed all of those 3 guys into one player, it was 4 catches and 3 touchdowns. It was just an annihilation. Riscano does have a touchdown in 3 straight games, but Quincy Craig has been working in some too. I mean, I really do want to target Kansas on the ground. It's just a matter of predicting this backfield. It very well could be Riscano game. It could very well be a Mahdi game. Both of them have upside. It's just a little bit harder to predict. This wide receiver room, Chris Hunter is doubtful. I mean, Chris Hudson and Javon Watley would have probably been their top options regardless. But if Hunter can't go, Hudson and Watley become even better plays. And Trey Spivey, talk about efficiency. The guy only has 11 catches on the year, but 6 of them are for touchdowns. He's averaging 25.5 yards per catch, and 68% of his yards are after the catch. So it's not necessarily a safe play, but it seems like if he gets a catch, there's a good chance it's going to pay dirt. So at 3,200, I don't mind that. Plenty of different ways to stack this game, whether you want to play the passing games of both, take a chance on one of these running backs and run it back with the passing game on the other. Just another really solid game environment. Let's keep the solid game environments going. Iowa State at TCU. Iowa State a 7-point dog, but still projected to score a decent amount of points. Rocco Becht has been pretty mid, if I'm being honest, but you can throw the ball on TCU. So, I mean, Becht is capable. I mean, he threw for 300 yards on BYU. And I'm not saying BYU and TCU are the same thing, even though they end with the same letter. It can get confusing. But Becht is definitely in an okay spot. It's just that 7,800 price tag is kind of staring me in the face here, and not for good reasons. And I mean, he can get you some yards on the ground to boot. I don't mind it if he's going to come in low owned, which he probably will. Abu Sama led us all on a bit of a roller coaster last week with that Q tag, and then he proceeded to become active, and then he only played 4 snaps. Luckily, he's probable again. He's on the injury report again, so we might get to play the same game this week. If he doesn't go, Carson Hansen is in a spot that 6,500 is just too cheap. He had a stellar day basically without him last week. And even if Sama goes, I don't mind Hansen in this spot at 6,500. This has been a little bit more of a confusing pass catching room. It seems like it was going to be Bramer and Burkle again, and then Eskelson will have a spike game, and Townsend shows up, and Soul had a spike game. But I will say that Chase Soul having 11 targets in their last game does catch my eye quite a bit, especially if Ben Bramer is going to be out. Bramer is questionable currently on the report. He was carted off the field last week, so I would say questionable to doubtful, but that's just me. Officially questionable. Like I said, if Bramer can't go, it should be great for Soul at 3,800. If I was going to stack Beck, he'd probably be my first option, but Gabe Burkle probably is in a great spot too if Bramer doesn't go. And obviously Eskelson can spike, like I said. Some good spots for these Iowa State wide receivers. And TCU, you can get to this team through the air. On the TCU side, Josh Hoover he always looks pretty good on paper, and he has underperformed in the last couple of weeks in what seemed to be good matchups. There was a rogue report that he was having thumb surgery during the bye week, but the reporter who said that actually retracted it and said, oh, no, he just has a jam thumb. But if you told me that Josh Hoover's thumb was hurting, it doesn't surprise me. Another confusing thing with this TCU team is their running back room. Kavorian Barnes started the West Virginia game, but he had a weird gap early in the first quarter from like 13 minutes left to go in the first quarter. He took his last carry and then didn't play again until the final play of the third quarter, and it even confused some of the reporters on site. Without him, Trent Battle had a great game, heavy workload with 19 carries. Typically, you do play running backs against Iowa State, and it does sound like Barnes is healthy now, and they were just being cautious with it last week. And because Battle was doing so well, they didn't have to worry about it. So if we do get a healthy Kavorian Barnes, I'd love him in this matchup. If not, there's nothing on the report that would signify that either of these guys are going to sit. So I do like Barnes some, but I could understand why you'd be hesitant after what happened in their last game. And then Trent Battle, if he replicates his last game, 4,200 steal. Speaking of a steal, Eric McAllister still might not be priced up enough at 7K. He had 28 targets over the last two games, including 17 against West Virginia. Both games were without Joseph Manjack and Ed Small. Basically without Joseph Manjack. I'll get to that in a second. But Ed Small has already been ruled out, so we don't have to worry about that. And Manjack isn't on the report, but he was available each of the last 2 weeks. And he played 10 offensive snaps against Baylor and just 1 on special teams against West Virginia. So I think he's in the doghouse, and that's what the word is from the streets of Fort Worth after he had some drops earlier in the season. McAllister's going to be a stellar play either way. Jordan Dwyer's in for a good game here and there. He was targeted more as well in those 2 games without Manjack and Small. I do like attacking Iowa State in the slot, though. There's been some pretty good success there this year. They can get beat anywhere, but if you believe that slot narrative and Manjack is truly blacklisted, Major Everhart at min price could have a big opportunity as well here. So if you need a min price guy, he might be somebody that you can look to. Another great game to stack, though. Let's keep it going. Duke at UConn. Great team totals. Darian Mensah, 9,500, might be the biggest quarterback price jump I've ever seen. I don't remember. Maybe in college football overall, I don't remember seeing someone go from 6,400 to 9,500 or a price jump of that nature. At least on back-to-back 12-game slates. Sometimes you get weird things if you go with a guy on a midweek slate and then he's on the Saturday slate next week or vice versa. But UConn's pass D does look okay on paper. They faced the likes of UAB, Rice, and Florida International recently. Spoiler, Duke ain't those teams. And Duke has been chucking that pigskin lately, man. Darian Mensah is a great play if that $9,500 price tag fits your build. The running back room, still a split. Shepard is the RB1. Castle's the RB2. I think that's pretty clear. Raw points, Shepard's the better play. It's just the fact that he's 8,200. It's just a matter of price with these guys. A great matchup, but at what cost? It would be probably a different way to play this Duke team if you want to. Just throw Nate Shepard in the lineup, and I don't know if you completely at 8,200 with Nate Shepard, you probably have to fade Darian Mensah, right? You could figure it out. In this receiving core, if you love Mensah, if you can play Mensah, if you can afford it, you will probably want to try to afford one of his pass catchers with him because they've just been stellar. Cooper Barkate has at least 100 yards touchdown in 5 straight games. Last week, it was both. Quayshawn Brown has shown some huge upside. Haggins and Anthony both get enough field time to consider as well. I mean, even the tight ends, Hazley and King, have upside. There's just so many different ways to stack Duke if you can afford it. But Barcade and Brown are the top options. And Brown having that discount still at 4,500 is nice, and it's a way to help you stack it. On the other side, 7th-year senior Joe Figiano has been on a pretty stellar run this year, albeit against pretty poor competition. Duke is probably the best team they've played, but it's not like Duke has this defense that's going to scare you. Their pass defense has been pretty bad this year. I could see a scenario, too, where UConn gets behind early and they have to pass a lot. Again, just 9,200 is tough, but UConn at home, it's a non-conference game for Duke. They don't have – it doesn't impact their chances at an ACC title if they lose this game. Connecticut could come out firing too, and Figiano is probably a big part of that. Cam Edwards has pretty much been the lone running back, but he usually gets there with scoring. He hasn't had a 100-yard game since week 4 against Ball State. One thing to watch too is that Mel Brown was set to miss 6 to 8 weeks with a collarbone injury, and this is week 8, so we could see him eat in a little bit. But what I'm really interested in for UConn is Skylar Bell. UConn has thrown for 2,700 yards this year, and 1,000 of it has been to Bell. I love seeing guys from Wisconsin get out and have success somewhere else. It's so much fun. He only has 2 games with fewer than 10 targets, and he had 2 touchdowns in both of those games. So it seems like no matter what, Skylar Bell's going to find a way to get there. He should honestly probably be an 8K wide receiver, and I would not be surprised if he is the highest owned player on the slate, and he's the reason that Carnell Tate isn't. The rest of these guys, Juice Vereen does have 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games. Snyder's been consistent. It's just nothing explosive. It's really Bell here, and then the rest of them are cheap dart throws. Speaking of cheap dart throws, both of these teams, I just want to throw these darts in the water. Dante Moore, the teams are Oregon and Iowa. Dante Moore for Oregon, 8K. Just Oregon looked bad against Wisconsin, and I don't think Oregon gets a lot of credit for their name, but I don't know that they're as good this year as we've seen them in years past. Dante Moore is just a little bit too expensive for me. The report on Jaden Lamar in the running back room is that he's, quote, out for a little bit, but not for a long time. And without him, we've seen some big games from Jordan Davison and Noah Whittington. It's just Iowa's tough to run on. I don't like saying it. I don't like Iowa, but they are tough to run on. And it's in Iowa City. It still feels like even if these guys get the volume, it's going to be tough. They're just cheap. If you really want to play a 23.5 point team total Oregon, they're cheap. And then DeCorian Moore still seems like the top option, but he's only getting like 5 targets a game. And Oregon has been spreading the ball around a little bit more. Sadiq Bryant, Benson McClellan, all of these guys get involved. So if it's going to be spread out again in a lower scoring game, it's a tough click for any of these guys. You definitely be hoping for the target share to funnel or a couple of touchdowns for one guy. And Iowa. Oregon has been shutting down the pass this year. Not that it matters. Mark Gronowski's super talented and can really run, but it's a game that shapes up to be sloggy against a good defense. If Iowa does move the ball, Gronowski's probably going to be a part of it. And if they do, another big part of it would be Kamari Moulton. He's been running great since he came back, just not against great teams. But I do think if he can manage 75 yards against Indiana, there's some slight potential here for Moulton. But the rest of this team, you just fade and move on. Never play Iowa wide receivers. In fact, never play Iowa unless they're playing Minnesota is kind of what I've learned the last couple of years. Auburn at Vanderbilt. Auburn, a 6.5 point dog on the road. Another sloggier game. DJ Durkin announced Ashton Daniels is going to be the starter again for this game, but we could still see Jackson Arnold and Deuce Knight. Daniels had put up something like 60 yards last year, and then Arnold came in against Kentucky and just a stinker of a game that they lost 10-3. But hey, Arnold wasn't good either, so then they ended up putting Ashton Daniels back in. Anyway, I don't think I'm touching this quarterback situation. Despite Darrell Robinson being active and warming up, Jeremiah Cobb still had 20 carries, and Robinson didn't log a snap, so it was Omar Mabson. If I was going to play somebody from this Auburn side, Jeremiah Cobb, I still think just on volume alone is in a good spot. The wide receiver room, Cam Coleman, just a little bit expensive. the top three guys are Coleman, Singleton, and Thompson as of late, but Coleman is just the most expensive of the three, so it's a tough click. Maybe you can get Singleton at 4,900. I think he still has some upside. Vandy hasn't been as good against the pass as they have against the run. It's just a matter of, is this Tigers team rejuvenated by the coaching change, or are they just going to mail in their season? It's something you definitely have to consider. On the Vanderbilt side, they basically have to win out, I think, if they want a chance. Obviously, that would mean they win the SEC title, which would certainly assist in getting into the CFP. But either way, they want to win this game, and they can't have a letdown here against an Auburn team that just is broken. Diego Pavia, if anything, last week we saw that he can get it done with his arm as much as he can with his legs. I mean, a lot of it wasn't garbage time, but I do think that, I mean, it still counts for DFS. I don't think there's going to be much garbage time for Vandy in comeback mode in this game. Weirder things have happened. But Auburn's run game or run defense is still pretty good. One of the better ones in the country, in my opinion, and their pass defense is not great. So if Vanderbilt has to throw again, maybe they can get a little bit done here. We saw Alexander and Young pretty much get shut down against Texas. I think Auburn can do the same thing to them. It's again, cheap running backs in a tough matchup. It's just a matter of if you want to figure out the timeshare and figure out if they can get it done against this Auburn defense. But if Vandy does throw the ball a little bit more, again, Eli Stowers was a huge beneficiary of the increased passing last week. I mean, it's not a huge surprise. He's been Diego Pavia's favorite target for the last 17 years. Junior Sherrill, Trey Richardson still on the field enough. Richie Hoskins actually saw a little bit of an increase when they threw the ball a bunch too. But the thing with Auburn's pass D is they've been getting torched by tight ends and slot guys. So if you think history serves, that is Stowers and that is Hoskins. Obviously, Stowers being the top option for Vanderbilt. All right. That'll do it. Like I said, a ton of sackable games. Still some pretty significant news that we're waiting on, but I don't think it's a ton that's going to really shift the slate unless something pops up. But still, find yourself a Discord, find yourself a membership. Don't forget the football package is on sale right now at Ship It Nation, and you get into a drawing for a 555 Millie Maker ticket. But that's going to do it for this week's college football show. As we end every week, we're going to end with rule number 1. College football is fun. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the sweat. Enjoy building your lineups. Enjoy watching college football on TV. Be thankful that we have that, and then we get to play college football DFS. But most of all, be thankful for every day we're here. Don't take a single day for granted. We don't get enough of them, and we never know when the next one is going to be our last. So have fun with your life. That's going to do it for the show. I'll see you in the streets this weekend. Let's go out and ship one for the big guy.